1929, a paranormal investigator walked through the doors of a crumbling Victorian rectory in rural Essex. He called it a psychic laboratory. He spent the rest of his life trying to explain what he found there. He never could. Some buildings carry history inside their walls. Dates, names, events. Borley Rectory carried something else, something that refused to leave, even after the building itself was gone. Before we talk about the house, we need to talk about the ground it was built on. Borley is a hamlet in rural Essex. Population, barely 100 people, a church, a lane, fields that stretch out flat and silent in every direction. But beneath that stillness, the land has a history that predates the rectory by centuries. Medieval records suggest a Benedictine monastery once stood on or near the site. The monastery is gone, swallowed by time and dissolution. But local legend, passed down through generations of Essex villagers, carried something darker with it. The story of a nun and a monk. A forbidden relationship inside an institution that would not tolerate it. Discovered, condemned, executed. The monk hanged. The nun sealed alive inside the convent walls. Whether that story is truth or folklore, no one has ever confirmed. But what happened on that land over the following 100 years suggests that if it was just a story, something else decided to make it real. In 1862, Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Bull was appointed rector of Borley. He had 14 children. He needed a large house, so he built one. A 23-room, 2-story red brick rectory on 4 acres of Essex countryside. The family moved in almost immediately. And almost immediately, the footsteps began. Locals who later gave accounts to investigators recalled hearing unexplained footsteps inside the house as early as 1863, within a year of the family arriving. Not one account, multiple accounts, independently given decades apart. Then came the shape, a thin gray figure, moving through the garden along a specific path, the same path every time, silent, slow, never acknowledging the living. The Bull daughters gave her a name. They called her the Nun. Local organist Ernest Ambrose later confirmed that the Bull family were, in his words, very convinced they had seen an apparition on several occasions. Henry Bull died in 1892. His son, Reverend Harry Foister Bull, inherited the house and the parish, and the phenomena continued without interruption. Harry Bull reportedly had a summer house built in the garden, positioned specifically so he could watch the nun's path from a distance. He watched it for years. He never found an explanation. When he died in June 1927, Borley Rectory stood empty for the first time in over 60 years. It didn't stay quiet for long. July 28, 1900. A date that became central to every investigation that followed. 4 of Henry Bull's daughters, Frida, Mabel, Ethel, and Doris, were returning to the rectory from a garden party when they saw her. Not in the half-light of evening, not through a window, in broad daylight, approximately 40 yards from the house. A woman in gray, moving silently along the familiar path through the garden. They called out to her. She didn't respond. They moved toward her. She kept walking, slow, deliberate, following the same route, and then walked into the trees and was gone. 4 witnesses. No dispute between their accounts. No explanation ever given. This one sighting, reported, documented, and cross-examined, became the cornerstone of Borley's supernatural reputation. And it was only the beginning. October 2nd, 1928. Reverend Guy Eric Smith and his wife arrived at Borley Rectory. They were not told about the history of the house. They were simply a couple moving into a parish rectory in rural Essex. Within days of unpacking, Mrs. Smith was cleaning out an old cupboard when her hand touched something at the back. A brown paper package, wrapped and tied. Inside, the skull of a young woman. No identification, no explanation for how it got there, no record of it ever being placed. The Smiths reported it. And then the house gave them something far harder to report. Disconnected servant bells began ringing, bells that had been physically disconnected and could not ring. Unexplained lights appeared in windows of rooms that had been locked and empty. Heavy footsteps moved through corridors at night when no one was walking. And outside, the sound of a phantom horse-drawn carriage circling the property in the darkness. Reverend Smith was a rational man, an educated man, a man of faith who dealt in certainties. He contacted the Daily Mirror. The Daily Mirror sent Harry Price. Before we go further, you need to understand who Harry Price was, because he matters to this case in ways that go beyond simple investigation. Price was born in 1881. By the time he arrived at Borley in 1929, he was already Britain's most famous paranormal investigator. Price was born in 1881. By the time he arrived at Borley in 1929, he was already Britain's most famous paranormal investigator. He had exposed dozens of fraudulent mediums. He had developed a rigorous testing methodology. He carried a kit with him: chalk, string, mercury, paper, tools designed to detect and document any attempt at deception. He was a skeptic by training, a showman by nature. And Borley Rectory was the case that would define him. He arrived on June 12, 1929. Within hours of entering the house, a glass roof pane was shattered by an unseen force. A red glass candlestick was thrown and smashed. Pebbles landed in the hallway with no source. And during a seance held in the Blue Room, spirit communications were rapped out through the wooden frame of a wall mirror. Price documented everything. He filed reports. He cross-referenced witnesses. He applied every tool in his kit. And then he made his declaration. Official, public, printed across Britain's newspapers. Borley Rectory was the most haunted house in England. Nothing that followed would contradict him. In October 1930, Reverend Lionel Foister moved into Borley Rectory with his wife Marianne and their young adopted daughter Adelaide. They had been given no full briefing on what previous occupants had experienced. They were simply a couple moving into a parish rectory. Within weeks, they wished they hadn't. The activity didn't continue. It escalated. Bottles and objects were hurled down the staircase, smashing in the hallway below. Windows shattered without impact. Stones were thrown from inside the house from no discernible direction. Adelaide was locked inside a room with no key. Wine brought for guests was found to have turned to ink. Marianne Foister was thrown from her bed in the middle of the night. Then the walls started writing. Messages appeared on the plaster, scrawled in a desperate, fragmented hand, always directed at Marianne. Marianne, please help me get out. Marianne, light, mass, prayers. Price estimated that between 1930 and 1935, over 2,000 separate incidents were recorded inside the house. 2,000. In 5 years. The Foisters left in October 1935. Marianne reportedly hated the house from the moment she arrived and had begged Lionel to leave. Once they were gone, she never discussed what happened inside Borley Rectory again. Not once. for the rest of her life. With the rectory standing empty again, Harry Price made a decision that was either brilliant or reckless, depending on who you ask. In 1937, he placed an advertisement in the Times of London. He was recruiting 48 official observers, academics, students, professionals, anyone willing to spend weekends inside Borley and document everything they experienced. The volunteers came. They documented bell ringing, unexplained luminous patches in empty rooms, objects moving, temperature drops with no draft. But it was what happened in the cellar that became the most chilling record in the entire case. During a seance, a communicating entity identified itself as Sunex Amours. It made one statement: "I will set fire to this house tonight at 9 o'clock. The observers waited. 9 o'clock came and went. Nothing happened. They wrote it off. Then, on the night of February 27th, 1939, 11 months later, the new owner of the property was unpacking books in the hallway when a paraffin lamp fell over. Borley Rectory burned to the ground, and witnesses gathered outside reported seeing a figure in an upstairs window as the flames consumed the building. A figure that could not have been there, or chose not to leave. Harry Price returned to the ruins in August 1943. The war was raging. Britain had other concerns, but Price couldn't let Borley go. He organized a small archaeological dig in what remained of the cellars. He was looking for evidence to support the legend of the nun. The dig found bones, human remains buried beneath the floor. A young woman, estimated to be in her 20s, unidentified. The skull that Mrs. Smith had found in the cupboard 15 years earlier had already been taken. The rest of her had been here all along, beneath the floor of the most haunted house in England, waiting. Price had the remains given a proper Christian burial at a local church in 1945. The phenomena at the Borley site reportedly lessened after that. Not stopped. Lessened. Harry Price died in 1948. He never stopped believing in Borley. 8 years after his death, the Society for Psychical Research published a formal report, and it was damning. They accused Price of staging evidence, of using his skills as a trained stage conjurer to manufacture phenomena and deceive his own observers. They pointed to inconsistencies in his records, testimony that contradicted his published accounts. The paranormal community fractured. Some accepted the debunking, others rejected it. But here is what that report could not account for. The Bull family's experiences, which predated Price by 40 years. The Smith family's experiences, which happened before Price ever visited. The accounts of 48 independent observers, many of whom documented incidents when Price was not present. And a tape recording made inside the locked Borley Church in 1974, 26 years after Price's death, which captured footsteps, doors closing, and what investigators described as a male groan with no one inside the building. Either Harry Price orchestrated the most elaborate, multi-decade paranormal deception in British history, involving hundreds of independent witnesses across a span of 80 years. Or something at Borley was real. The Black Files don't deal in certainty. We deal in evidence. And the evidence at Borley, even stripped of Harry Price entirely, has never been fully explained. Borley Rectory was demolished in 1944. 3 houses now stand on the site where it once rose above the Essex fields. People live there, ordinary lives, ordinary routines. But reports from the surrounding area have never fully stopped. Figures seen on the old Nun's Walk. A gray shape at the tree line following the same path it always followed. Unexplained lights in the church at night. The sound of footsteps on empty ground. And in 1974, that tape, recorded inside a locked, empty church that sits meters from where the rectory once stood. Footsteps, a closing door, a groan, no source, no explanation, no one inside. The rectory burned, the ruins were cleared, the bones were buried, and Borley, quiet little Borley, population barely 100, still has something walking its fields at night. This is what the Black Files deal in, not the easy cases, not the ones that close neatly with a rational explanation, the ones that stay open. Borley Rectory lasted 77 years before fire took it. It produced more documented paranormal activity than almost any location in recorded history. It drew investigators, academics, clergy, journalists, and gave all of them something they couldn't explain. The nun still walks, according to those who live near the site. The walls no longer exist to write on, but whatever was trying to communicate at Borley, whatever was trying to get out, doesn't seem to need walls. This is Case 012. The Black Files remain open.